to Boston, then to Georgia, and then I'm here. So I pretty much circled the whole continental United States. I came in 2005 when they were building the new science building, and Dr. McFarland hired me to be the planetarium director to get it up and running. And I did that for many, many years, and then about 6 or 7 years ago I moved into administrative roles. I became a department head for the physics and astronomy department, and then just last August I actually moved up to associate dean position. So the faculty say I'm going to the dark side, but that's how those things go. Hey, this is it. We are excited. Being an astronomer, this is the highlight of everything, because there is nothing cooler than a total solar eclipse, to be right in totality. This will be the third one that I've been in, and so this is an exciting time. When I came here in 2005, I started teaching my students, hey, look, in 2024, this is going to come right through here. And they were like, oh, that's way out there. And so to me, it was like something, oh, it's never going to come. And now we're a week and a half away, and so that's exciting. So, what is a solar eclipse? Let me see here. I got a long enough wire. I'd rather have this over here. All right. So this is the typical diagram of a solar eclipse. What happens is we have the sun, we have the moon, which comes between the Earth and the sun, and then the shadow from the moon, what we call the umbra, hits the Earth. Now the problem with this diagram is, from an astronomer's point of view, is it's not really very accurate at all. The reason it's not accurate is because the scales are totally off, and you can't put the scales, anything to scale, on the page and make it accurate. But, because if you looked at this, you would think, oh, every time the moon goes around, we're going to have solar eclipses. And that is not the case. It actually is a fairly rare phenomenon. It happens once or twice a year, but most of the time it's like in the middle of the oceans or Antarctica or something like that. The reason for that is that, oh, we're off the page here. Okay. Your screen is slightly smaller than my diagram. Here's the Earth. You see the Earth here? Mm-hmm. The moon would be over here, about this big. Okay? About a quarter the size of the Earth. And that would be about an accurate distance between the moon and the Earth for their sizes. The problem is you can't put the sun on the same scale. The sun would be out here 100 times bigger than the Earth, so about 3 times the size of this room, and it would be 400 times further away, or about 4 blocks away. So you can't ever get that in a picture, but if you imagine all that going on, with the sun being way, way out there and the moon being over here, you really have this really tiny, narrow shaft of darkness coming to the Earth. So most of the time, the moon is above or below that, or essentially the shadow misses the Earth. So this is a very rare phenomena, especially for any given place on the Earth. The next time it's going to come here through Greenville, 2317. So 300 years nearly, or 250 years from now, you're going to have that chance. Yeah, so, all right, let's talk about previous solar eclipses. Has anybody been in the total solar eclipse path? In here? Okay. So these were ones that happened from 1951 to 2000. So this is every total solar eclipse that hit North America from 1951 to 2000. This one right here happened in 1979, February 26, 1979. How do I know? Because I lived in Bozeman, Montana, which is right down here in the corner. And I saw that eclipse when I was 16 years old. And that was one of the things that got me excited about astronomy. I also had a grandfather that was really active astronomer. And then I went to college. I didn't think, oh, I'm going to be an astronomer. Actually, I didn't know what I was going to do, like many people. And I showed up and I took some tests and stuff in our orientation. And they said, hey, if you want to be a physics major, we'll give you a scholarship. And I became a physics major. Sometimes, I tell students that too, is that sometimes the decisions in your lives are not these grand ideas that you decide. Sometimes little things push you in different directions. But then I went actually taught high school for 1 year, decided that was way too much work for how little money I was making. And so I went back to school, and that's why I said, hey, I'm going to be an astronomer, because I've always loved astronomy, and I loved higher education, graduate school so much, I just kept going. But the ones we care about are these over here. So this is 2001 to 2050. I don't know if you can read that there. But the one we care about is this one right here. You see this one coming up here? This is the one in a week and a half, on April 8th, 2024. And we're right here, right smack in the path of totality. Now there was one just a few years ago, 2017, August 2017. You probably heard about it. It went just north of here. And a bunch of us astronomers, we traveled up to Nebraska here to watch that one just a few years ago. And most of the pictures I'm going to show you are pictures I took from that eclipse, that total solar eclipse. Now, if we miss this one, if you miss this one, or if the clouds don't give us a break, we do have another shot, but it's in 2045. And you just got to go a little bit north here. You see it goes through Oklahoma and Arkansas. So, yeah, put it on your long-term calendar, your 21-year calendar. All right, so what kind of things are you going to see during the eclipse? Well, when the eclipse starts, what astronomers call first contact, that's when the moon starts to cover the sun, then you'll see this edge of the moon. Now, you can only see this with eclipse glasses. And that's why everybody needs to have eclipse glasses, okay? Don't look at the sun without them, especially at this part of it. When we get to totality, you don't have to have the eclipse glasses. But several things you'll notice. If you got, it depends how good your eyes are, you may see some sunspots. Right now, we are in sunspot maximum. The sun goes through a peak every 11 years. The peak is this year, which happens to occur at the same time as the eclipse, which is really cool. That doesn't happen that often. And it makes for much cooler effects happening on the sun. But you can see those sunspots, and you'll see the edge of the moon. And this is an interesting thing, too, because this proves right here, because you get a nice, really crisp edge, that the moon has no atmosphere. If the moon has an atmosphere, it fuzzes out the light. When we have a lunar eclipse and the Earth's shadow is hitting the moon, it's a really fuzzy edge because the light is going through our atmosphere. So that shows that the moon has no atmosphere. And then as it progresses, it'll move slowly across. Now this takes about an hour and a half or so, hour 15 minutes, it depends on the exact eclipse, from first contact to where it gets to totality. And so you can watch this occurring, and it'll get slowly darker and darker and darker. Okay? Most of the effects you'll notice is right when we get near the end. At first, you won't even notice it getting darker. It takes quite a while. And then it'll start to get significantly darker and gets dark real quick. Some of the other things that you can see just before we get into totality, and we'll talk about that, is things called shadow bands and crescent shadows. So, I don't know if you can see this very well, but this guy here was an astronomer. He put out a white sheet of paper. But then right before totality, when the moon is covering most of the sun, you get this weird effect that's called shadow bands. And you get dark and light bands that go across the ground. You see how there's kind of dark and light bands there? That's another cool physics effect. Because the moon is blocking the light, and the light is a wave coming across, instead of just cutting it off, it actually makes diffraction rings, or these undulating patterns around the edge of it. And you can see that. You can never see that from the sun normally, except during a total solar eclipse. But it's a really kind of obscure thing, meaning you kind of have to really be looking for it, or you might catch it out of the corner of your eye. You're like, oh, what was that? And you'll see, because they move across the ground. And it happens to move very quickly. A lot of people say, they've never even seen them, but it's kind of just a weird effect. The other thing that's fun to do is anything that makes sunlight, like this is from a tree, where the light goes through the tree leaves. Normally there'll be little spots of light everywhere. But during an eclipse, all of those spots will turn into the shape of the sun. And you'll get all these, what we call crescent shadows. And you can watch the progress of the eclipse through that. Or some people will put their hands in just little tiny holes through, and then you look on the ground where it is, and you'll see little crescents. Or you can be fancier, you can bring out like a colander with a whole bunch of little tiny holes. Or like we do with the elementary school kids, we actually have a piece of cardboard, and then they can put like their initials. You put holes in the shape of their initials, and then they hold it up, and the initials will make the shapes of the, or whatever kind of shape they want to do. This is essentially just a pinhole camera effect, a natural pinhole camera effect. But it's a great way to watch the eclipse, and it doesn't hurt your eyes. All right, at totality, this is the exciting part. We get about 4 minutes, 20 seconds, something around here. This is when everything exciting happens, and it happens fairly quickly going in and out. The first thing you'll notice is what we call the diamond ring effect. That's that effect where the last piece of the sun is still bright down here, but you start to see the glow around. This is called the corona, the outer layer of the sun's atmosphere. And it'll look just like that. I mean, almost exactly like that in the sky. That's the sign that you're going into totality. That's when you can remove your eclipse glasses. So it's very obvious. You see the diamond ring, you're like, okay, I don't need my glasses anymore. Until you see the diamond ring on the other side, because it does exactly everything in reverse. And then we get another phenomena called Bailey's beads. Bailey's beads is, this is a little obscure here, but you see there's kind of some brighter dots down here. The moon is not a perfect sphere. It has craters and bumps and mountains and stuff like that. So there's light coming through the valleys in between those, but then the mountains are blocking it, so you get the kind of disconnected dots across it. That's called Bailey's beads. And that will occur, and that all occurs fast. It's kind of like, oh, hey, there's a diamond. Oh, there's Bailey's beads, and then bam, it's gone. So all that happens within seconds of each other. It doesn't last very long. And then we are into totality. And during totality, what you'll see is the corona, which is this outer glowing gas floating around the sun. So you'll see this black hole in the sun with all this glowing gas around it. That's what we talk about, and I like to talk about archaeoastronomy, which is ancient people and what they knew about astronomy. You can imagine to them an eclipse, a solar eclipse like this, would have been really frightening because they didn't know what was going on. And it's not like it just got dark at night and the sun was just gone. As you can see the hole where the sun was. There's this black hole, and then they'll glow around it, and you're like, that's where the sun used to be. So that would be a terrifying thing if you didn't know what was going on. The shape of this corona out here varies with sunspots. So when there's no sunspots, when we're at sunspot minimum, you get a perfect crown, which is what corona means. You get a perfect crown around the edge and it just circles it. But when there's lots of sunspots, you get things like streamers, these lines that come shooting out in different directions. There'll be regions where there's less and regions where there's more. That's because sunspots create all kinds of activity on the sun. Eruptions, prominences, all these kind of things that when they blow up, they create things like auroras on the earth and all that stuff. Well, it also disrupts the corona, which makes it cooler. So we're in a time when our corona should have these really nice streamers and it should look really good. We're hoping. Nobody knows until that actual day. And then you can also see prominences. If you look around the edge of the sun, this red glowing gas here, that is gas that gets trapped in these sunspot magnetic fields. So sunspots are created by magnetic fields on the sun. And a magnetic field has arches that go across from it. Remember back when you did the iron filing things in class? That's happening in space, and the gas, this hydrogen gas, gets trapped in that and glows because the sun is so hot, and it makes this red glow. Yeah?
Dr. Montgomery, naked eye can see that or no?
Yes, if the prominences are big enough. This was in 2017, and yes, you could see this one with your naked eye. Okay? You can also, during totality, you can use like a pair of binoculars. Just don't ever use them any other time, but just during totality, you can even use a pair of binoculars for a short time. Just be real careful, don't ever use it. You know, as soon as that diamond ring comes back, then don't use it. And yeah, these smaller ones, they would have been hard to pick up, but this one you can see. What you'll see, you won't see all that detail, of course, it was taken through a telescope. But what you'll see is little red spots around the edge, which are prominences. All right, and then at the end of totality, you're 4 minutes later, everything's going to happen in reverse order. It's going to come out the other side. You're going to get Bailey's beads. You notice it went in down here, and it's going to come out over here. Now, it won't be perfectly across from each other unless you're exactly in the center of the eclipse path. Greenville's not exactly in the center of the eclipse path. Sulphur Springs is. You guys are slightly on the north side. So it'll come out, and it'll be like, not quite 180 degrees off. It'll be off a little bit. We know the exact position, but it's not really critical. But what will happen is you'll see the diamond ring coming out the other side. You'll see Bailey's beads, and then you'll see the diamond ring coming out the other side, like this. And so the diamond ring flipped on the other side. That's the end of totality. That's when you got to put your eclipse glasses back on again. And then the whole thing goes until the moon comes out the other side. All right, other things that happen during the eclipse, during that totality, is dogs and pets start acting strange. Dogs have been known to start howling and running around because they know that it's not nighttime, but it's weird. And people ask, well, does it get dark like night? It's like, no, it gets kind of like this bizarre twilight thing going on. Meaning stars come out, planets come out, but not really faint stars, only the brighter ones. So you're kind of in that twilight zone. And it doesn't really feel right. It doesn't feel like night. It's a weird effect. That's why I tell people, you don't watch the solar eclipse. You experience it. Because it's not just seeing it. That's why we tell people, pictures will never give you any justice. It's kind of like saying, oh, I saw a picture of the Grand Canyon, I don't need to go there. There is no comparison between a picture and actually being there. Street lights come on, the ones that have auto sensors, this will come on because it will get dark enough that that'll occur. There is a sudden change in temperature. Temperature can drop by 10 degrees within those few minutes, those 3 or 4 minutes. And then when the temperature changes, you get this difference in density between the spot outside the shadow and the spot inside. And so all of a sudden the air rushes in. You'll feel like a gust of wind, usually right at the end of totality. All the air has come rushing in. So we get what we call micro weather created by the eclipse. And it can create weird things. Even that 4 minutes is enough to create the changes that create little weather patterns. Bright planets and stars will be visible. When you look at the sun will be straight south, very high when we watch it, about 70 degrees up, so you can't miss it. Jupiter will be off to the left. Then you'll have Venus and Mercury off to the right. There may be a few bright stars. It's kind of in a position where there's not a lot of bright stars where the sun is at its location. That will pop up as well. You'll be able to see those very easily. The other thing is that birds have been known to go to roost because they think it's nighttime. They're not quite as smart as dogs. They don't realize it's just weird. They're just like, oh, it's night. It's time to go roost. All right, let's talk about the details for Greenville, Texas. So here is the path of the eclipse across the United States. Now this goes fast, meaning this is going about 1,500 miles an hour, the shadow across the United States. So unless you're going in a plane that can go past the speed of sound, you're not going to keep up with it. Now you can increase it. There are people that go, if you're going 600 miles an hour, instead of 4 minutes of totality, you can get in it and stay there for almost 10 minutes before it finally passes you. But to stay completely with it, you really have to be going supersonic. Back in the days when the Concorde flew, they would do that. They would go into an eclipse path and fly along the eclipse path, and they could make it last for like 30 minutes. But we're right here, and you can see one of the things that, and you've probably heard all the hype too, is where everybody's worried about how many people are going to come here. Because you got to be in that eclipse path. And that eclipse path is only about 100 miles wide. So the fear is that all these people up here are going to come this way, right? So we got millions of people that are going to come down this way, and then the people from here are going to come up this way. And so that the people in the eclipse path are going to get kind of overrun that day. When I was in 2017, I ended up over here. We were over here. And my daughter came up from Denver to watch the eclipse too, because the path came right through here. Well, it was about a 2.5-hour drive up to the eclipse path from Denver, but it took her 8.5 hours to get back. Because a million people from Denver all came up to watch the eclipse, and then they all came back. It wasn't getting to the eclipse, because people came at different times, and there wasn't a problem getting there. It's just the eclipse is over, and everybody left at the same time. And it just made the whole interstate pretty much, a parking lot. And back then, and over there, if you're ever this part, there's one road. It's not like you had a lot of options. We were here, and we actually were in the middle of Nebraska, and we realized there's I-80 goes across here too. We didn't want to deal with the traffic going that way, so we just took the back roads and drove across Nebraska, which there was no problem in the back roads. The problem is you have to stop every 15 miles for another town, but it took us a while, but we got back there. All right, so here is the details for Greenville, Texas. So here you are, right here, right? This is the middle of the path, the red line. That's why Sulphur Springs is making a big deal, because they're right smack in the center. It's not going to make much difference, other than they get about 15 more seconds of totality than you do. It's going to look just as cool right here, so don't worry about that. People are like, oh, is it a bigger deal? No, it's not worth worrying about, okay? If you were up here on the edge, I would say get closer to the middle, but you guys are in great shape here in Greenville. Commerce is about exactly the same. We're at the same position from it. Notice that the other thing is they're just worried about people from here, because like Denton and Sherman, all these people are outside. They're going to come in. So even if you don't go further away, just getting those people in, you're adding several 100,000 people extra. Even the other side, if you're over here, Fort Worth is barely in, so those people will probably move in too. So I would not go into the Dallas area. It'll probably be a massive mess. All right, we're simply are out here.
Construction, that congestion is a real thing then.
Yeah.
I know a trucking company that's keeping all the trucks off the road that day.
Yeah. And in Oregon in 2017, it was even worse. Because Oregon's the same thing. There's, pretty much one interstate goes this way and then one goes south. And yeah, it was pretty much a parking lot there for many, many hours. Wow. Because in Oregon, you had all the people from Seattle and all that coming down. And then you had people from California coming up. And then they all tried to leave. And there were small towns there where people came to watch the eclipse, and they also bought all the gas and all the food, and there was just no gas or no food to be had for a while. So now here, there's a lot more towns, a lot more facilities. Out there, when you get out west, there might be a town, and 50 miles from another town, there's just nothing else in between. So here, I don't think we're going to have that issue. And I think the problems will only be right that afternoon. That afternoon will probably be rough. But I tell people, just be ready to hang out for a few hours. Don't try to get here and try to get out immediately. That's when you'll get in trouble, if you're willing to hang around. And if you live here, not a problem, right? Just kind of hang out during that time. All right. I know I'm going to talk about the details of the timing here, but I made it bigger because I knew that's hard to read. So here it is bigger. So this is exactly when this is going to occur for Greenville, Texas. So first contact, that's what I was talking about. That's when the eclipse starts. So that's the very beginning, 12:25 p.m. That's when you're going to see the moon start to cover the sun. Use your eclipse glasses. Yeah. And then second contact, this is the astronomer's term, that's when it hits the other edge, and that's when totality occurs. That's going to happen exactly at 1:42:15. And we know that actually down to like a thousandth of a second. So there's no, oh, this might be off. No, this is precise. We know the movement of the Earth and Moon exactly. Okay, so that's not the problem. If it's off, it's because your clock's off. It's not because your moon's off.
Set your clock by it.
Yeah, exactly.
The atomic clock.
Well, there's some weird historical things. Like Lewis and Clark, when they were trying to figure out the longitudes when they were traveling. Well, they had a special clock that was set to Missouri time, St. Louis when they left. But they let it run out once halfway through. And so they had to reset the clock. Well, the only way to reset the clock is something that that's going to happen everywhere on the Earth at a specific time. So they did know about a lunar eclipse. When the lunar eclipse happened, they reset their clock so they could get the longitudes when they're calculating position.
Wow.
So yeah, those things become important.
Wow.
All right. During totality, take your eclipse glasses off. This is the greatest thing ever. Enjoy it, okay? People are like, oh, it's going to be bad. No, during totality, the moon, several thousand miles of rock is blocking all the sun's bad rays. So we're good for those 3 minutes here, right? 3 minutes, 4 minutes, 4 minutes, 10 seconds you got here, right? And then this is the end of totality. And remember, what signals totality is when you see that diamond ring effect. And it's very obvious, you'll see it. It'll be diamond ring, start, diamond ring to end, then you put your eclipse glasses back on. These are eclipse glasses, so I'm glad to have that. I brought some too, but it looks like you are already prepared for them.
They don't say it on the glasses, but they said it on the package.
Yeah, you're good. You see this? We tell people, be careful, it's rare, but there are some fake ones out there. Make sure you have this, and she has the right one, that says ISO. That means they're certified eclipse glasses. The problem with the fake ones is they'll block the sunlight, but they don't block the ultraviolet and infrared radiation. That's what hurts your eyes. These do. That's why these have been certified to do that. So these are perfect glasses. And the sun, I have to dispel myths sometimes. Some people are like, oh, the sun beams out more energy during eclipse. No, the sun's giving off the same energy all the time. It doesn't care where the moon is, right? So it doesn't get any stronger or any worse. It's just in a normal day when you're out there, you're not staring at the sun. So the reason that it's a problem during eclipse is the sun starts to get fainter, so it doesn't hurt your eyes to look at it, so people start staring at it. So just be aware, don't stare at the sun without protective glasses, okay? Other than during totality. And no, you don't have to worry about your pets. I had somebody in my last talk say, do I have to get sunglasses for my dog? It's like, no, your dog's smart enough not to look at the sun. Even during eclipse, they're not going to be staring at the sun like us humans are. We're a different beast on that one. All right, the biggest deal we have to worry about is weather. And we're getting down to the point where they're starting to do forecasts. Nobody trusts them at this point. 12 days out is still... until you get within about 48 hours to 3 or 4 days, that's about the only time they can start to get accurate. But if you look at climatology data, you look at the last 50 years of what it's like in April, all the way across the eclipse path, that's what they did on this chart here. It's a little confusing. Lower number is actually better. This is the percentage of days that have clouds, essentially. So the lower the number is better. You see, the eclipse actually starts out in the Pacific Ocean. And right here, and the Pacific Ocean has quite a few clouds, and then through Mexico right here is actually the best place. That western Mexico where it's a desert out there hardly has clouds. I mean, less than 20% of the time down here, about 25%. This is Texas right here, this spot right here. So this is Uvalde, which is right down there on the border between Mexico and Texas. We're Dallas, we're right here. Yeah. And you see it hits a tiny corner of Oklahoma, not very long in Oklahoma. And then it goes up and it gets worse as you go east, which is typical of the weather patterns this time of year. So we are at this position right here. We're looking at about, if you see, it's about 55%. 55% chance that it's cloudy that day. So it was kind of like flipping a coin, right? It's pretty much 50-50 shot. I was driving in this morning, saw the moon out there. I'm like, man, I hope it's like this in a week and a half because today is beautiful. But it could be like it was 3 days ago and we're getting an inch of rain too. You just don't know where we're going to get at any given time. Even if it's partly cloudy, you can still see the sun if there's like high clouds and stuff like that. Because the sun's so bright, you can still see the eclipse effects. It won't be as crisp or anything because the clouds will diffuse it, but you'll still be able to see them. We just can't handle it when it gets so dark. Or what I say is if you can still see shadows from the sun, distinct shadows, it doesn't get washed out, you'll still be able to see the eclipse effects. Now, even if it's super cloudy, what will happen is you'll be outside and all of a sudden it'll still get dark. It'll just instantly go dark for 4 minutes and then it'll get light again. But that's about all you'll see. It's about the only thing that occurs. So, if you got your lucky socks, your anti-cloud dance, whatever else works, start now and see what you can do to make it clear on that day. If you want more information, the university webpage, we have a special eclipse page. It has a couple videos that I created with more details. There's also links to all kinds of NASA things and all kinds of information there if you have any questions about the eclipse. And thank you.